At 18, just about to start college, I suddenly found myself homeless. This all happened thanks to Claire, the golden child, who always managed to make me look worthless in comparison. Claire is 4 years older than me. From the time we were kids, it was clear she was the favorite. Not just a little, but obsessively so. If she got an A, my parents would throw her a parade. If I got an A, it was like, oh cool, what's for dinner? You get the idea. I grew up with the mentality that nothing I did mattered because Claire would always outshine me. By the time she went to a top business school, my parents were all over it, treating her like a prodigy. They paid for everything, her tuition, her apartment, her fancy clothes. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, knowing I'd have to do things on my own. When I got accepted into a reputable college in the United Kingdom to study history, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get some support. Nope. My parents told me they couldn't afford my tuition. Okay, college is expensive, but what pissed me off was that they wouldn't even co-sign a loan. I wasn't asking them to pay everything, just to help so I wouldn't drown in debt my whole life. They refused, and we fought a lot. Their reasoning? We already paid for Claire's college. We have to think about our future now. Oh, and they were planning to start a small business, so all their savings were going into that. I was stuck. I didn't want to lose this opportunity, but it felt like my parents were throwing obstacles in my way for no reason. They had no problem spending tons on Claire, but when it came to me, they suddenly had to be frugal. With no other options, I turned to my Aunt Denise, my dad's older sister. She's a neurosurgeon, way more successful than my parents, and super down to earth. My parents always had weird tension with her. They'd act polite at family gatherings, but I could tell they were bitter about her success. My dad, in particular, hated feeling overshadowed by her. I didn't want to involve her at first, but I was desperate. I reached out, asking if she'd help with my tuition. She didn't hesitate, saying, "Of course I'll help. Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I was terrified my dad would find out. If he knew I'd gone behind his back to ask his sister for money, he'd lose his mind. So I begged Denise to keep it a secret. Things were fine for a while. My tuition was covered, and I was getting ready to leave for school. That's when Claire ruined everything. I still don't know how she found out about me asking Aunt Denise for help, but she did. Being Claire, she couldn't let it go. She had to blow it up into a huge drama. One night, I came home after hanging out with friends, and something felt off. All my stuff was packed in boxes. My clothes, books, even my bedding. My parents were in the living room, and Claire stood there with a smug, self-satisfied look. It felt like a twisted intervention. My dad didn't waste time. He threw a stack of papers at me and said, "Explain this." I had no idea what he was talking about. When I looked at the papers, I realized Claire had gone full psycho. She'd fabricated fake emails between me and Aunt Denise, making it look like I was betraying the family, leaking details about my parents' planned business in exchange for tuition money. I couldn't believe my eyes. Claire had gone through my laptop, found real emails, and doctored them with Photoshop or something. I was stunned. I tried to explain it was all fake, but my parents wouldn't listen. They just stood there saying, "We trusted you, and you stabbed us in the back." It didn't matter what I said. They believed Claire because they always did. It was like I didn't exist anymore. They told me to pack my things and leave right then. I was officially kicked out because of a complete lie. I begged them to reconsider. I didn't want to burden Denise, especially after she'd already agreed to pay my tuition. But my parents didn't care. They called me a traitor and wanted nothing to do with me. So, that was it. I left with just the clothes on my back and a few boxes of stuff and moved in with Aunt Denise. Honestly, I don't know how I would have survived without her. She took me in without a second thought and treated me like actual family, something I hadn't felt in years. While my parents were busy worshiping Claire and focusing on their business, Denise was the only one who cared about me. For that, I'll always be grateful. But I can't shake the memory of that night, walking into my house, seeing my stuff packed, my parents staring at me like I was a criminal, and Claire standing there, smug, knowing she'd won. So, there I was, kicked out, standing on Aunt Denise's doorstep with my life in boxes. I was still processing what had happened. It felt like a bad dream. How do you go from thinking you're part of a family to being homeless in one night? The whole thing was surreal, but I wasn't that surprised. My parents had always made it clear Claire came first. I just never thought they'd take it this far. Denise, being the angel she is, welcomed me with open arms. She didn't ask a million questions or pry. She saw I was hurting and said her house was mine for as long as I needed. That kindness hit me hard because I realized I'd never felt anything like that from my own parents. Living with Denise was strange at first, waking up in her guest room looking around at a house that wasn't mine. But over time, it felt more like home than my childhood home ever had. We got closer, talking about everything. Turns out, Denise knew more about my parents' nonsense than I realized. She'd kept her distance from them for years, only showing up to family events out of obligation. She told me something that blew my mind. My dad's grudge against her started way before I was born. Denise had always been more successful. Med school, a great husband who passed away young, living her life. Meanwhile, my dad was doing okay but got weirdly competitive whenever they met. Their relationship became a game of who could look better to the family. Instead of being proud of his sister, he resented her. It wasn't just career stuff. My dad felt overshadowed financially, socially, everything. That jealousy bled into how he treated me. Denise had figured this out years ago but stayed quiet to avoid making things worse for me. Now that I was living with her, she filled in the gaps in my life I'd never made sense of. Why my parents never cared about what I did. Why they always bent over backward for Claire. It all boiled down to some weird family dynamic I didn't even know existed. Living with Denise was great, but I couldn't relax completely. I kept waiting for my parents to call, for Claire to show up, or for an apology. Of course, that never happened. Days turned into weeks, and nothing. Not a text, not a call. At first I was angry. How could they toss me aside like I was nothing? Then the anger faded, and I felt numb. My brain was shutting off emotions just so I could function. Denise was amazing, though. She never pushed me to talk unless I wanted to. She let me figure things out, and even helped me get ready for school, making sure I had everything before I left for the United Kingdom. If it weren't for her, I don't know how I would have gotten through that time. But even with her support, the silence from my parents was deafening. You'd think after kicking your kid out, you'd check on them, right? But no. I guess I shouldn't have expected anything different, but I still did. One afternoon, about a month after the ordeal, I got a text from Claire. It was so clearly her, obnoxious as always. It said, "Hope you're doing okay. By the way, don't leave your laptop lying around." No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done, just a smirk in text form, reminding me she got me thrown out. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. She was taunting me. I didn't respond. What was the point? Claire wasn't the type to feel guilty. In her mind, she'd won some weird family game. I thought about texting something snarky but knew it wouldn't make a difference. She'd just get off on it. So I blocked her number and tried to move on. It wasn't easy. Every time I looked at my phone, part of me waited for something from my parents. Maybe a message from my mom saying she regretted everything, or a passive-aggressive email from my dad pretending nothing happened. But nothing. Radio silence. In the months that followed, Denise and I got into a solid routine. She became more than my aunt. She was my confidant, my friend, and basically the only family I had left. I started to see how messed up my parents were. They'd spent so long focusing on Claire, trying to mold her into the perfect daughter, that they missed everything else. When Claire inevitably messed up, it would be too late for them to fix it. Around the time I was getting ready to leave for school, I got another message, this time from my dad. It was short, "Good luck in the United Kingdom." No apology, no explanation. It felt like a slap in the face. After everything, all he had was good luck. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. I deleted the message and tried not to think about it. The day I left for the United Kingdom, Denise drove me to the airport. She hugged me and told me how proud she was, how she knew I'd do great things. It was the first time anyone in my family had said those words to me. And it hit me harder than I expected. I got on that plane feeling like I was leaving more than my home behind. I was leaving the part of me that always sought my parents' approval. From that moment, I decided I didn't need them anymore. I had Denise, my future, and myself. If they wanted to reach out, fine, but I wasn't going to waste energy chasing people who didn't care. I was done. Life in the United Kingdom was great. I settled into college, made friends, and for the first time in years, I wasn't constantly thinking about my family. I won't say I forgot them, that's impossible, but they weren't on my mind as much. I focused on my studies, figuring out my future, and enjoying life without the drama of living under my parents' shadow. But of course, just when things were going smoothly, something had to mess it up. I finished college and returned to my city. I found a very good, high-paying job. Then I got a call from my mom, the same woman who hadn't spoken to me since they kicked me out. It was totally unexpected. I was in my dorm room, going over notes for a paper, when my phone buzzed. I saw her name and thought I was seeing things. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Should I answer or ignore it? After everything, why was she calling now? I let it ring a few more times. Then, against my better judgment, I picked up. "Hello?" I said, trying to sound calm, though my heart was pounding. There was a pause, like she wasn't sure what to say. Finally, she spoke. "Hi, it's your mother." "No kidding, who else would it be?" I didn't say that, though. I stayed quiet, waiting for her to explain why she was calling after nearly 2 years of nothing. She hesitated, then said, "We need to talk." I couldn't help but scoff. Now she wanted to talk? After everything? It was so typical. But part of me was curious. What could be so important that she was reaching out after all this time? "About what?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Your father and we want to see you, she said, stumbling over her words. I could tell where this was going. They didn't want to see me because they missed me or felt bad for kicking me out. There was something they needed, and I had a good guess what it was. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Why? I asked bluntly. She didn't answer right away, which confirmed my suspicions. When she spoke, her voice was quieter, like she was trying to sound motherly.
Your dad and we've been going through a hard time. Things haven't been easy since the pandemic.
There it was. The real reason. Money problems. I hadn't heard much about their business since I left, but Denise had mentioned their shop wasn't thriving as expected. With the pandemic, it made sense they'd be struggling, but I wasn't going to jump in and save them, not after everything. Okay, I said, my voice flat. I wasn't going to make this easy. Your sister, Claire, she's been managing things for us, but... She started, and I cut her off. Let me guess, I said, already knowing. Claire screwed it all up. There was a long pause, which was answer enough. Of course, Claire had messed up. I don't know why they were surprised. She was always more interested in looking good than doing the work. They put all their faith in her, and now it was backfiring. My mom let out a shaky breath. Things haven't been going as planned, she admitted. And we need help. I laughed. I couldn't help it. After everything, throwing me out, cutting me off, letting Claire walk all over me, now they wanted my help? The audacity was unreal. Unbelievable, I muttered. What's so funny? My mom asked, sounding confused, like she couldn't understand why I wasn't jumping to save the day. You're serious? You actually think I'm going to help you? I said, my voice rising. I could feel the anger bubbling up, all the emotions I'd pushed down for 2 years surfacing. We're your parents, she said, her voice wavering. We made mistakes, but we need you. I shook my head, though she couldn't see me. You didn't just make mistakes, Mom. You kicked me out. You believed Claire's lies over your own son. You haven't spoken to me in years, and now you need me, so I'm supposed to drop everything and come running? She was quiet. I could tell she wasn't used to me standing up for myself. Back when I lived at home, I would have gone along with whatever they said to keep the peace. Not anymore. I'd changed, and I wasn't going to let them walk all over me again. Finally, she spoke, but her tone had changed. She wasn't trying to be soft anymore. Now she sounded irritated, like she couldn't believe I was being difficult. We're still your family, she said sharply. You owe us at least that much. That was it. The final straw. I didn't owe them anything. They owed me an apology, but I wasn't holding my breath. I don't owe you a damn thing, I said, my voice cold. If you need help, go ask Claire. She's your golden child, remember? Without waiting for a response, I hung up. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but I felt relief. I'd finally said what I needed to. That night, I called Aunt Denise and told her what happened. She wasn't surprised. They've been relying on Claire for years, she said. It was only a matter of time before it caught up to them. We talked for a while, and by the end, I felt even more certain I'd made the right decision. My parents had chosen Claire over me, and now they were paying the price. As harsh as it sounded, it wasn't my responsibility to fix their mistakes. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I didn't need their approval or acceptance. I had my own life, and I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their toxic mess. I'd survived their betrayal. Now it was their turn to deal with the consequences. I thought I was done with the family drama after that call with my mom. I felt good about how things went. I'd stood up for myself and made it clear I wasn't their safety net. I figured they'd give up and go back to depending on Claire, but I underestimated my sister's ability to stir the pot. Claire wasn't going to let me get away that easily. About 2 weeks after the call, something weird happened. I was having a normal Saturday afternoon cleaning my place when I heard a knock on the door. I don't get visitors, I live alone, and my friends text before coming over. I was confused. I peeked through the peephole, and guess who was standing there? Yep, Claire. For a second, I thought I was seeing things. What was she doing here? She hadn't spoken to me in years, except for that stupid laptop text, and now she was showing up like everything was fine. My gut said to ignore her, but I knew Claire wouldn't leave until she got what she wanted. I opened the door, and before I could say anything, she smiled like we were best friends. Hey, she said, all bubbly and fake. It's been a while. I stared at her, caught off guard. Yeah, it has. What are you doing here, Claire? She looked at me with an overly sweet expression, like she thought she could charm her way in. I wanted to talk, she said, tilting her head. Can I come in? I crossed my arms, not moving. About what? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Her smile faltered, but she recovered. Come on, can we just talk inside? It's important. I should have said no. I should have told her to leave. But curiosity got the better of me. I stepped aside and let her in, though I didn't make her feel welcome. I didn't offer a seat or a drink. She was lucky I was letting her in after everything. She walked in, looking around like she was taking it in. "Nice apartment," she said, trying to make small talk. I didn't respond. I wasn't here for pleasantries. "Okay, Claire," I said, getting to the point. "What do you want?" She sighed dramatically, like she was exhausted from whatever game she was playing. "Mom told me about your conversation," she said, folding her arms. "She's pretty upset, you know." I raised an eyebrow. "Upset? She kicked me out of the house, Claire. What exactly does she have to be upset about?" Claire rolled her eyes like I was being unreasonable. "Look, I'm not here to rehash all that. We both know you've always been difficult." I almost laughed at how casually she said that. "Difficult?" I repeated. "Are you serious right now? You fabricated emails to get me kicked out. That's difficult?" She waved her hand dismissively. "That's ancient history. I came here because I want to make things right." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "You want to make things right?" I asked, skepticism dripping from every word. "Yeah," she said, nodding like this was reasonable. "I know things got complicated with the family, and maybe I overreacted back then, but I think it's time to put all that behind us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You think you overreacted?" I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "Claire, you destroyed my relationship with our parents. You lied about me, manipulated them, and now you're standing here like none of that matters anymore." Her smile faded, and I could see she was getting frustrated. "I didn't come here to argue, okay? I came because I need your help." There it was, the real reason she was in my apartment. Of course, Claire wasn't here to apologize or make amends. She needed something. I felt my jaw clench as I waited for her to continue. "I've been trying to keep the business going," she said, dropping the fake sweetness. "But it's been really hard. The pandemic hit us badly, and I'm doing everything I can, but it's not enough. Mom and Dad don't want to admit it, but we're on the verge of losing everything." I crossed my arms, not feeling an ounce of sympathy. "So, let me guess, you want me to help bail you out?" Claire shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not asking for a handout," she said defensively. "I just thought we could, I don't know, figure something out together. You're doing well for yourself, right? I figured you'd want to help the family." I couldn't believe her. She was trying to guilt-trip me into saving the business she'd driven into the ground. "You figured wrong," I said flatly. Claire blinked, clearly not expecting that. "Wait, what do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not helping you," I said, my voice firm. "Not after everything you did. You ruined my life, Claire. You turned my parents against me, and now that you're in trouble, you think I'm just going to forget all that and save you? No." She stared at me, dumbfounded. For the first time, Claire didn't seem to know what to say. "But we're family," she said weakly, her voice losing confidence. I shook my head. "We stopped being family the day you made it your mission to destroy me." Claire's face went pale. She wasn't used to hearing no, and I could tell she was struggling to process it. After a long, awkward silence, she stood up. "Fine," she said coldly. "If that's how you want it, that's how it's going to be." "You made your choices, Claire," I said, standing my ground. "Now you have to deal with the consequences." Without another word, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a minute, letting the tension drain out. Part of me felt bad, like maybe I was too harsh, but then I remembered everything she'd put me through, and that guilt faded fast. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. I wasn't living in Claire's shadow anymore. I wasn't the second choice or the scapegoat. I was finally free. I thought after Claire stormed out, things would go quiet. I figured she'd get the message that I was done with her and the family drama. But I underestimated how stubborn she could be. It wasn't even a full week later when the next wave hit. This time, it wasn't Claire knocking on my door. It was both my parents. It was a Saturday again. Funny how these things always happen on my days off. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when the knock came. It wasn't soft. It was one of those heavy, insistent knocks that tells you whoever's on the other side isn't leaving soon. I got up, already having a feeling about who it might be. When I opened the door, there they were, my mom and dad, standing together like a united front. My dad looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to be there, but my mom had that look in her eye. The one that said she was determined to fix whatever mess had been made, even if it meant bulldozing her way through. I sighed, leaning against the door frame. "What do you want?" My mom gave me a strained smile, trying to keep things friendly. "Can we come in and talk? We need to sort some things out." I was tempted to slam the door in their faces, but part of me figured if I didn't let them in now, they'd keep showing up. So, with an exaggerated sigh, I stepped aside and let them in. They walked in, glancing around like they expected something more than a basic apartment. My dad stayed quiet, but my mom went straight for the couch, sitting down and patting the seat next to her like I was a kid she was trying to console. "I'll stand," I said flatly, crossing my arms. "All right," she said with a tight smile. "Look, we know things have been difficult between us." "Difficult?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That's what you're calling it?" My dad finally spoke up, his voice low and gruff. We didn't come here to argue. Then what did you come here for? I asked, not bothering to hide my frustration, because I'm pretty sure we've already been over everything. Claire tried, you tried, and I made myself clear, I'm not helping. My mom's smile wavered. She probably wasn't used to me talking back like this. That's not why we're here, she said, leaning forward slightly. We're here because we want to apologize. I almost laughed. Apologize for what exactly? Kicking me out? Believing Claire's lies? Or was it that you didn't even bother checking in on me for 2 years? My mom's face tightened, and my dad shifted uncomfortably, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. They clearly weren't expecting me to throw it back in their faces. We know we made mistakes, my mom said, her voice quieter now, but we're family, and family has to stick together. I could feel my patience wearing thin. This was just more of the same. Every time something went wrong, they'd pull out the family card like it was supposed to erase everything. But I wasn't falling for it this time. You guys are only here because you need something from me, I said bluntly. If things hadn't gone south with the business, I wouldn't even be hearing from you. Let's not pretend this is about family. There was a moment of silence, and then my dad spoke up, his voice rough but more honest than anything I'd heard from him in years. You're right, that caught me off guard. I blinked, staring at him. What? You're right, he repeated, sighing heavily. We screwed up. We believed Claire. We pushed you out, and we didn't even think twice about it. And now, well, now things are falling apart, and we're desperate. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't expecting him to admit it. My mom, on the other hand, looked like she was trying not to lose her cool. Clearly, she hadn't planned for him to lay it all out like that. I appreciate the honesty, I said after a long pause, but that doesn't change anything. My mom cut in, her voice sharper. It doesn't change the fact that we need you, and you owe us after everything we've done for you. And there it was again, that sense of entitlement. They really believed I owed them something just because they were my parents, like all the years of neglect and favoritism didn't matter. Now that they were in trouble, I was supposed to bail them out. I don't owe you anything, I said, my voice cold. Not after the way you treated me. You made your choice when you believed Claire over me, when you threw me out and didn't even check if I was okay. Now you want me to save you. That's not how this works. My dad didn't say anything. He just sat there, staring at the floor, like he was ashamed. But my mom wasn't done. We're your parents, she said, her voice rising. We raised you, we took care of you, and now you're just going to abandon us? I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for her. You didn't take care of me. Aunt Denise did. You chose Claire, and now you're stuck with her. That's on you. My mom looked like she was about to explode, but my dad put a hand on her arm, stopping her from saying whatever was next. He stood up, looking me in the eye for the first time since they walked in. We understand, he said, his voice steady but sad. We're not going to push you anymore. We just needed to try. For a second, I almost felt bad for him. But then I remembered everything they'd put me through, and that sympathy disappeared. I hope you figure it out, I said, stepping toward the door and opening it for them, but I'm not going to be part of it. My dad nodded, like he'd expected that. My mom gave me one last look, half angry, half pleading, but when she saw I wasn't budging, she stood up and followed him out. As they left, I closed the door and stood there, letting the silence settle in. I'd done it. I'd finally stood up to them, and for the first time, it felt like I was really free.